Hello and welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the rest of the relics. I kind of wished I did this before. And what I was doing before was doing a relic, a fetish, and a ring. And then I decided it'd be better and more efficient to just do all the relics, then all the rings, then all the fetishes. So in deciding that now, I might quickly go over the other, what did I do, two or three that I already did, just so they're all in one place. So we're just gonna go top to bottom. I'll kind of give my thoughts at the end of each, explanation and whatnot, but let's get into it and start with the Eye of a Madwoman. So the Eye of a Madwoman is one of the OG relics. It came with the, I don't want to say the base game, but it was one of the first ones that they had when the playtest came out, or early access, I should say. So it says a madwoman was once believed to be a witch, a common occurrence. The town laughed, but after many strange deaths, they decided to burn the woman just in case. However, the rain fell and silenced the flames, and a powerful lightning strike killed all the spectators. The power is an eye inked with the infant blood. The relic strikes any near-death enemy with a heavenly lightning. So how it works is once you get a enemy down to 10% for a regular enemy or 30% for a heavy, a big old lightning strike will shoot down and deal 70 damage to him, which is usually enough to kill him. If it's a minor enemy, it will kill them. If it's major, it will do a shitload of damage to them. And then at Mysteria 3, if it doesn't kill them, it will stun them. So this thing's really good, especially for like proc builds. So if you're running Decay or any form of damage over time, whether it's fire, like actual fire, not just the rend, this is really good at finishing off those enemies. So, I mean, other than that, it's just good overall for helping you deal with heavies, especially, or, well, elite enemies, majors, just to get them down a little bit more. So, I'd say this one, as far as, like, you get good value because it's not something you have to proc. It's a pretty passive proc. So I would rank this thing in the A, like, if it was on a tier list, this would be A tier. Just because it's, you just put it on, forget about it. It doesn't bring a whole lot of utility aside from the stun, but it's really, really good at getting rid of those enemies that just manage to survive a little bit. I also believe that if there are enemies grouped up, the lightning strike will hit everything that's within like a 3-foot proximity to the one that's being struck. Just so y'all know. Now on to Kirfane. This one, we'll just read it and then I'll get into it. Sorry. A powerful witch annihilated a small army, leaving only 2 survivors, herself and a lone soldier hiding in a nearby lake. When she found him and raised her knife to deliver the final blow, lightning struck, and then there were no survivors. After landing multiple shots, a bolt of lightning arcs between nearby enemies. So shots to trigger the lightning is 20. That's the guaranteed lightning. There's also a 3% chance per shot to trigger a lightning. And then casting a light spell guarantees a lightning arc on the next shot. So this is very much kind of like a spellcaster weapon. And it also benefits greatly from using something with high fire rate. So like the Rotweaver is probably, I think that's the fastest firing weapon in the game right now. So it's really good with that. It's also really good if you are running something that does fire. So like the Midas would be really, really good. As far as the damage, it's really low. I don't think it's, well, I don't want to say it's low. It's dependent on how much damage you're doing, as far as I can tell. I could be wrong here. But it seems like if I'm using a high power weapon, when that lightning arcs, it does big damage. But if I'm using something like the Rotweaver, it doesn't do a ton. I don't really know how to feel about this one. I mean, it's pretty passive, but it just is not, it's not enough. Like, I would rather run Eye of a Mad Woman. At least that's how I feel. Now, if you're running a spellcaster build, I think Kirfane would be excellent because, you know, you constantly sending out the lightning on top of whatever spell you're spamming. But just in my opinion, this is not my favorite one. I would give it like a B tier in my personal opinion. Let me know how y'all feel about it. Book of Serpents is another OG one, and I haven't used this since like the first major update came out. I actually went back and was using it to get the footage for this video, and it was kind of fun. I think it's really good for new players. It really just, it punishes the shit out of anything that hits you, which is everything's trying to hit you, and it's kind of silly, honestly. It really allows you to just kind of steamroll the game. So we'll get into what it does. A gift from one witch to another. Too much mead during the Sabbath made the giftee forget that the book is merely a disguise. After returning home, she started testing the spells and cursed herself with decay. All that was found was the grimoire and a pool of rotted meat. A powerful amulet disguised as a grimoire. Anyone who hurts its owner is cursed with decay. So minor enemies can die instantly at 12%, and major enemies have a 6% to die instantly. The curse will stun. It says minor enemies, but it's... I don't know if it's in my footage, but I have noticed that it stuns majors too. But yeah, and the stun lasts forever. I'm talking like 10 seconds. They'll just be sitting there hunched over. So it really allows you to just kind of steamroll the game. Now, I did test this with the Angelus to see if it would still proc through a shield, and it doesn't. So, but yeah, it basically, it just ticks them with damage and it stops them. And you'll notice that it happens quite frequently that the enemies will just die. I think this has a good place with the newer players that are struggling to get through the game, but once you get more advanced, you're better off running other stuff. This is really like a kind of a C tier in my personal opinion. Like, it's not bad, but there's just so many better options. Now we get into the Severed Ear, and now this thing is, it can be kind of useless in some cases, but if you use the right equipment, it skyrockets to like S tier. But it really depends on what you're running. So if you're running All-Seeing Eye or Rotweaver, then this thing is incredible. If you're running a spell like Blight Cyst, it's alright, and then if you're running anything else, it's kind of just, why not run something else? So, a young and inexperienced witch turned her scream into a weapon. The power of one was so intense that it made her deaf. A prayer used this against her, reaching the banshee in her sleep. The echo of her screams still linger in her ears. Reloading releases a shockwave that knocks back nearby enemies. The shockwave range is 9 meters. It does give you quick reloads, which could be nice for stuff like, you know, the Angelus that has a long ass reload animation. But I mean, and I guess it would make sense running with the Angelus because knocking back those enemies means they're not hitting you, but the real power from this comes from the third Mysteria, which is the shockwave damages enemies affected by decay, which it's a big amount of damage and it doesn't have any cooldown. So if you're running Rotweaver, shoot the enemies a little bit to get them decayed, and then just reload, shoot once or twice, reload, and just keep doing that, and you will pump enemies full of damage. Like I said, this one's very dependent on the gear you're running, but in my personal opinion, when run with Rotweaver, it's S tier. This thing's incredible. I guess we'll go ahead and do a quick overview of the ones we've already done, just so it's all in one place. But the Parasite, it curses nearby the nearest enemy with decay. We'll read the description up here. The workshop doctor claimed the Parasite had a 100% mortality rate and said his farewells. When they found him still breathing 3 weeks after infection, his necrotic flesh crawling with larvae, they realized death wasn't the worst possible outcome. So it has a range of 15 meters. The effect cooldown is 6 seconds. When an inflicted enemy dies, their ailment jumps to the nearest foe with increased potency. Just meaning if it dies, it jumps to the next guy and it does a little bit more each tick. And then upon target's death, the effect may chain to 2 nearby foes with a 30% chance. This thing's very passive. I mean, yes, you can hunt down the enemy that it's affecting to get, max use out of it, but I find you can get the same effect by just running Blight Cyst. Like, as cool as this thing is, and I love the lore behind it, it's not that great. I think in my other video I gave it like a B, and I think I'm going to hold true to that, because it is useful, but there's just better ways to get this effect. Now, Blood of a Banshee, this is one of my favorites, and I think it's a lot of people's favorites. It's just so damn good. So, one woman cried so long and hard that villagers accused her of being a banshee. When she was burned at the stake, she confessed that her cries were caused by seeing a vision of her own death. Blood spilled by a banshee burned at the stake. Overkill causes the victim to explode, igniting nearby enemies. So the explosion range is 10 meters, the overkill value is 50 HP, explosion damage is 30, and then the explosion also knocks back minor enemies. But the thing that makes it so good, aside from, of course, causing enemies to explode, dealing damage to everything else, is that it applies fire, which rends enemies. So, you kill one enemy, all of a sudden all the other enemies around are taking way more damage on top of the burst. This is also a ton of fun to run with a spellcaster build, something running like fireballs, because you'll get those chain explosions, and it's just glorious, and it'll slow your PC right down. So this is another, I think honestly it'd be A tier. I really enjoy it, but I don't think it has any kind of utility aside from burning. I guess it does have the knockback, so I think there's an argument to be made that this could be S tier, but I don't really think so. I think it belongs in A tier. Painted Tooth, another OG one. A witch burst into flames in front of a monastery gate. Scared of her ashes, the monks avoided them for nearly a century. One day, a prayer came and examined the remains. The tooth was the only thing that found. The next day, the ashes disappeared. A tooth found amongst witches' ashes, critical shots on full health enemies ignite them. And it also bursts them with 30 damage. The majors get 70 on top of the 30, I'm pretty sure, because it says plus 70. It doesn't just say 70. So I think that's, 110? Or is that just 100 damage? That's 100 damage. I'm not mathing right now. And then you have a 10% chance to stun the enemy. This is a decent one. It's really good when you're running something like the Hunger or the new ice rifle, whatever it's called, the Sub-Zero something. You can turn it into a musket, but I think this one's pretty basic. It's pretty middle of the road. There's way better options, but this one isn't. You're not going to have a bad time using this. Like, it is good and useful, so we're going to give this one a B tier. Definitely a cool concept, but there's just better options. Now, Scorge is one that I didn't initially like, and we already did a video on this, but it quickly became one of my favorites. So, the Witch's Mercy, they called it in bitter irony. A Scorge whose sharpened tendrils would tear flesh and knit it back together in the same stroke, each lash perfectly calibrated to inflict maximum pain while denying the release of death. Prevents a fatal hit, removing bonus stamina instead. Refreshes on regaining focus. So stamina stacks removed is 8. Getting hit triggers a damage bonus that is inversely proportionate to health, and an improved healing effect while below 25% health. This thing says that it prevents a fatal hit, but like we discussed in the last video, it seems to prevent most hits as long as you have the stamina to prevent it. This thing pairs incredibly with cricket, just because the cricket helps you get focus back really fast. So this thing procs constantly. And then of course, with its improved healing effect while below 25% health, it means we don't have to run Henbane quite as often, which is definitely cool. I'm so tired of running Henbane, and I've stopped running it for the most part. I used it for this video because a lot of these proc from getting hit, so I wanted to make sure I didn't die showing these. But anywho, anything like this that gives me an option to maybe run one of the off picks for fetishes really makes me happy. Now, as far as survivability goes, I'd say this thing is S tier for sure. I mean, it's the only relic I know, well, aside from one other one, that really prevents a good bit of damage. And then the damage increase, if you can manage to keep your health low, that damage bonus that is inversely proportionate to the remaining health, that's super good. So this is such a high risk, high reward play style that pairs extremely well with the high risk, high reward play style of the cricket. You know, getting in everything's face, dashing around, trying not to take so much damage, but it's inevitable. So this thing's just incredible. Run with the right stuff. And then last but not least, the Braid of a Seductress. This one is kind of a niche one in my personal opinion. I don't run this one hardly ever. It is kind of fun, but I don't know, it's outclassed, I'd say, by the Scorge. I'd say this one's probably like a B. So, a husband ran away after being caught in a flagrant with a beautiful girl. The agitated wife wanted to slap her, but froze motionless in the attempt. When the husband returned, the wife's throat had been slit, and all that was left of the girl was the braid she had cut off. Radiates an aura that freezes any minor enemy who wounds the owner of the relic with a melee attack. That's what makes this so niche, is it only works for melee. 90% of the enemies you're gonna face are not melee. I mean, there are a lot of ranged guys. Most, if not all, of the major enemies are, you know, well, hell, it doesn't even cover majors. It's only minor enemies. So, I don't know. This one, it's just like, the usefulness is so limited to enemies that you really should never get hit by in the first place. And even if they do, it's not like it hurts that much. You get melee reduction by 30%, or the melee damage reduction from, incoming. Killing a frozen enemy restores 50% of the damage you did take, which those two don't pair very well together, because if you're not getting hit as hard, and then you're healing half of that back. Like, I feel like you would get a lot more healing out of it if you just took the full hit, but it just seems weird to me. And then the aura also works against major enemies, so I guess it does, but there's very few major enemies that will melee you. I mean, I guess they all can, but why are you in their face like that? It seems odd, and it pairs with a playstyle. I think this thing, the only time I've ever had success with it is when running the Psycho Pomp or the Echo, where I'm in their face doing big burst damage. So, I don't know. I think I'd give this one like a B, honestly. And I know I'm kind of all over the place, but that's just how I am as of late. So, if I had to pick a top 3, it would be Scorge, Blood of a Banshee, and then probably Severed Ear. followed by Eye of a Mad Woman. Now, the least useful that I think, good, and all of them are viable. Don't get it twisted. Don't think like, oh, these are the best, I have to use those. No, it's not a PvP game. Dude, you can make anything work. You play half the game while leveling without this shit altogether. So it's just adding on to how powerful you are. So I guess let me know in the comments which ones are your favorite, which ones are your go-tos, and let me know also which ones are your least favorite. So next episode we'll be talking about the fetishes. We've already covered 3, but we'll cover them again just so they're all in the same place. And with all of that out of the way, have yourself a very fine day.